Welcome back, everybody. The fights are back, so obviously we're sitting here at the table ready to talk about them. But I want to say maybe a half hour before you got here. I mean, dude, the breaking news, we got to cover it. R.I.P. Bellator. R.I.P. Bellator. Let's have a moment of silence for Bellator right now. We never knew when their fights were happening until the week before.
Hell yeah.
Then the PFL bought them.
Hell yeah.
And then we still didn't know when their fights were happening.
Hell yeah.
Then their fighters didn't get fights.
Hell yeah.
We thought they were dead,
Hell yeah.
but they weren't.
Hell no.
We we had that insane PFL versus Bellator card at one point.
Hell yeah.
Felt like things were rising
Hell yeah.
and rising,
Hell yeah.
but they weren't.
Hell no.
And now it's been officially announced that Bellator is dead.
Hell yes.
R.I.P. Bellator.
R.I.P. Bellator.
All right, let's talk about the UFC because that's what.
Let's move on to the A promotion,
Yeah. UFC Vegas 101 just happened. The fights are back this year in the UFC Apex, by the way. It's crazy that the last event in the Apex was the big UFC Vegas 100
I
card.
was
But
gonna say the same thing because I think it's definitely been a long time since UFC Vegas 100.
I mean, I'm happy though.
We
that
went
we're
all
back.
out for UFC Vegas 100.
UFC
then it
Vegas
just
200 is going to be a movie.
Yeah.
Like, that should be a pay-per-view at this point.
Oh yeah, seriously. But the thing is, if hypothetically, if they were to make that a pay-per-view, obviously in the Apex, feel like they would need to expand the capacity in the Apex and let more
True.
people in and to watch.
Well, is it? It looks like they have a decent amount of room in there, but it's just like how many seats do they really want to put in? Because when you look around it, like it's a huge room, and then they have like a few sets of almost what looks like bleachers, and then there's the cage side seats, but then there's like all this open space around the cage,
Yeah.
and it's like we could maybe get a few more seats in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when UFC they would give away UFC Apex tickets and we tried to enter and they need to do that again and we'll win it
Yeah,
this
I'm
time.
still wondering exactly how that works. Like
Yeah,
how
me
you
too.
get how do you get to the apex? Because like sometimes you see these random people in there. I'm like, how did you get there? Like they're not related to a fighter,
Imagine you
not a
get a
celebrity.
tour around the whole PI and it's like, oh my god, that would be insane.
That would be pretty cool. But I say we talk about the fights because the main event in particular was really intriguing between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas. And it's a big fight for the strawweight division, which is kind of like log jammed at the top right now, as we'll get to. But for those who didn't see the fight, Mackenzie Dern did avenge her first career loss, submitted Amanda Ribas with just a fantastic armbar in round 3 of that fight. And I thought that she looked really better than ever in this one, especially on the ground, because my big critique with Mackenzie Dern over like the past 3 or 4 years is as she's kind of like gotten to that upper echelon at strawweight, she's kind of had trouble finishing fights on the ground, which is kind of crazy when you think about like her level of jiu-jitsu. But at the same time, for a little bit, she would kind of like force things on the ground. And it was kind of like remember when Damian Maia was fighting, like everybody knew that he was going to try and get you to the ground and submit you. Like that was his game plan. And for a long time, that's kind of how Mackenzie Dern fought. But now, like, she's starting to round out her game a little more. She's getting a little more polished on the feet. And even on the ground, she's starting to use her ground and pound a little better. And even when she's like on her back or even on top, she's not trying to force these submissions and then it's it would always lead her to like get into these bad positions, or it would just get people it would help people be able to get up. But then now, like, it seems like she was a lot more patient in this fight, and it seemed to work out for her, especially with all those reversals that she had against Ribas. And it wasn't like quick at all the way that she did it. But I think that kind of I think that helped her in a sense, because if you remember that first fight versus Ribas, she couldn't even really do anything against her.
I think, if you ask me, I think there were still moments in this fight that could have gotten Mackenzie Dern into trouble. But at least she was constantly on the attack looking for the finish rather than trying to keep Ribas in a hold and just winning that way. Either way, um, when you have a grappling exchange like that between these two, I think the first round was rather lame. I don't think there was much to take away from that. But then you got some elbows in the second round on the ground, and then it was Ribas who started bleeding and stuff, and I thought that's when you saw that the fight really start to pick up, and I think from there, honestly, I didn't see it going to a finish. Not that Mackenzie, well,
Well, to be fair, like when she reversed her and got in full mount, even with only like 40 seconds up, I was like, oh god, like, this is gonna be
yeah,
bad.
but do you see Mackenzie Dern, TKOing someone on the ground and pound and all that?
Well, I honestly thought she was just gonna get the armbar, which she ended up doing.
Yeah, that did end up
You
happening.
can't like.
There was she went for a omoplata, I believe, in that second round too, and I thought she was gonna get that, but in the third round she went for the armbar. There was about 40 seconds left in the round where she went for the armbar initially, and then it was a buzzer beater to win the fight with the armbar. So,
I think the moral of the story really is you can't get fully mounted by someone like Mackenzie Dern who's that good at jiu-jitsu, because like I said, now that she looks like so much more patient and composed on the ground and she's
Yeah.
not forcing those finishes, she's looked a lot better.
First it was Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas' closed guard, and then it was the other way around. No, hold on.
Well, no, she was in Dern's guard and then got reversed, and since she was in guard, Dern ended up on top full mount,
Yeah,
which
that's
is like
what I meant. Yep.
that's a rough spot to be.
Yeah,
That's
that's pretty rough. So that goes to show why you can never count out a jiu-jitsu black belt ever. And I was gonna say too, like you said, where she's rounding out her style as a complete mixed martial artist, rather than just a one dimensional grappler. And that's I mean, still, it's not like you saw a whole bunch to take away from her striking on the feet, but
Although
hey,
I will
good.
say this, like defensively, she does look a lot better than she's looked even in like her past couple of fights, because she used to. My big criticism of her all the time was like she gets hit way too much. Like remember when she fought Jessica Andrade, and I said like that was a puzzling matchup because it just seemed like Andrade was gonna knock her out, which is basically what happened. And now, I mean, I know Amanda Ribas isn't the same striker as Jessica Andrade is, but to at least see Mackenzie Dern just not like walking into shots and actually having head movement and putting her hands up to block, and like I said, like not being a one-trick pony, it's definitely a bit more promising. I mean, that's why I think that this is one of the better wins, if not the best win of her career, just because she's looked so much better than she has even in her past couple of fights against someone who's already beaten her. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Just when I was starting to count out Mackenzie Dern, to be honest with you, Amanda Ribas was a pretty good bet, I think, coming to this fight. Even if you wanted to factor in, yeah, you can. But even if you wanted to
you would think so.
even if you wanted to factor in the last fight, I personally didn't. I just thought at this point in time, being 5 years later, I still think Amanda Ribas has future champion written all over her, but Mackenzie Dern, it's clearly still her time, and she's still got a lot left to prove herself. And like I said, just when I was starting to count her out, because her last two losses were against two names above her, was kind of pushing me off. The Godinez win was a nice win, but still didn't do a whole lot for me. And here's another fight that she's fighting down. But Amanda Ribas is on a really nice trajectory now. So we can talk about Ribas and what's could be left for her next for her after we talk about Mackenzie Dern. But Mackenzie Dern still has is definitely improving and has a lot left to prove herself, and so huge win. And we'll see how the rankings shift shift up tomorrow. So
Yeah, I don't expect Dern to move up a crazy amount just because she was fighting down, kind of like you said. And to talk about what's next, I do think her next fight she deserves to fight up, maybe even a title eliminator. I was looking at the rankings, and the name that I kind of stumbled on was Yan Xiaonan. That's
yeah, because
she's kind of fought everybody else. I mean,
her last two losses were Lemos and Andrade.
Yeah. And, if you look at the rankings, Tatiana Suarez is already fighting the champ, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
She hasn't fought Xiaonan, who's at number 2, which to me makes a lot of sense. She's already beaten Virna Jandiroba, and she's already lost to Andrade and Lemos. And then after that, she'd be fighting down. So to me, it would make sense to have a title eliminator type of fight versus Yan Xiaonan, because, like I said, strawweight right now is so log-jammed at the top that we need some of these contenders to iron each other out.
Well, that's part of why I would hedge saying that I definitely still believe Amanda Ribas is a future champion is because of how logjam strawweight is. So something tells me that a move down a flyweight is where she would be better fit. My bad.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I don't know. With her, she's one of those people where at flyweight she does look good, but then other fights she looks like she's too small.
At flyweight, right?
She's ranked number 10.
Yeah, so I think there's still a lot out. There's still a lot out there. I mean, she's fought Caitlin, Sermonera, and Rose, and at least in Rose's case, she's a new flyweight, and Rose is kind of on the decline, but also
to me that is like a strawweight fight, just up a weight class.
Yeah.
Rose is another one where I don't really fully understand why she's fighting at flyweight. I mean, honestly, I think if Ribas is going to win a title, it'll be at strawweight. I just think she's too small at flyweight. Like when you go against people like Valentina, Manon Fiorot, Erin Blanchfield, Macy Barber, those are girls who are going to be a lot bigger than her in there, and I think they're going to be a lot stronger. At strawweight, I guess she runs into some problems against people who are really technical in certain aspects, but I think in terms of when you're just talking about the weight, I feel like strawweight is the weight class where she would have the most success, because I think at flyweight there's going to be a limit once she reaches that upper echelon, and these girls are quite a bit bigger. Because I mean, if she's losing to Rose at flyweight, who's around the same size, I don't imagine. I get that we're talking about the champion here, but could you imagine her in the cage with Valentina Shevchenko? Valentina Shevchenko is a big flyweight, and that's who she'd have to beat currently if she wanted a title shot at that weight class. So coming off a loss at strawweight, she is lucky in the sense that she can kind of jump between the two weight classes, which could obviously give you momentum one way or another, because you could technically get 2 big wins at flyweight and then go back down to strawweight and fight in a big fight there. So even though she lost, she does have a lot of options. Arguably more options than Mackenzie Dern, who just won this fight, if you think about it, because Mackenzie Dern, I don't think she should fight down again. It just doesn't make any sense. She just beat 2 people who are below her in the rankings. That's why I think for Dern at least, Yan Xiaonan would be a cool fight, maybe on a pay-per-view or a fight night main event as a title eliminator. We'll see what happens in February with Zhang Weili and Tatiana Suarez, but I guess until then we really won't know. I mean, that kind of would change a lot of things, because obviously if Suarez wins that fight, the division's wide open, because she hasn't really fought a lot of those top contenders because she's been injured a lot of the time, and the contenders who she has fought, she's destroyed. So that's kind of it's an interesting fight that we have at strawweight in February, and I think that'll make things a lot clearer in the rankings. But if Zhang Weili wins, I think that Dern versus Yan Xiaonan would be an interesting fight. And as for Ribas, I think she can really go wherever. She has a lot of freedom in her 2 weight classes that she's fought at, so I'd be curious to see what she ends up doing there. But overall, man, it's just good that we finally have some fights back. I didn't expect to miss it as much as I missed it, but throughout the end of December and the beginning of January, and as you know, I'm a big F1 fan. There's no F1 races. I'm just sitting here fiending for something to watch, and so I was happy once we got this fight back.
Well, I think you get so used to fights every week.
Yeah.
kind of get spoiled as MMA fans, and when it's gone for even just 3 weeks, you're just craving it. It's like a drug.
Yeah, and then when Cesar Almeida got that insane knockout versus
Yeah,
Al
that.
Hassan, I was like, whew. Like, yes, sir, we're so back.
Yeah.
Not like Bellator, they're not
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, yeah. That's a bad start to the year for Bellator.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they haven't had too many good
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
as of late. But hey, man, at least the fights are back, and then next week we have the first pay-per-view of the year for the UFC, and that's a stacked pay-per-view for UFC 311. We got Makhachev versus Saryuki in 2. That's a big fight at lightweight. And then co-main event, Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov for the bantamweight title is going to be insane. And then even just the other fights on the undercard, Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill, that's going to be a really interesting fight at light heavyweight. Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano, Money Moicano. That's going to be a fun one. Kevin Holland versus Renier de Ridder. That's a big fight, I think, at middleweight. That's a sleeper fight on there, in my opinion. But then, speaking of sleeper fights, if you go to the prelims, I was talking to you about this a little bit before we went on. Peyton Talbot versus Heoni Barcelos. That's a huge fight at bantamweight. I've always kind of thought of Barcelos as a guy who's that like gatekeeper in that top 15 range. If you beat him, it says a lot about you. If you lose to him, it seems like you're not really ready for that upper echelon yet. Peyton Talbot is somebody I have a lot of faith in going forward. So if he wins this fight, I think the trajectory for him is just through the roof. And I'm excited to see what happens for this card. And it's about time we get another pay-per-view. I mean, the 310 was in like the very beginning of December, right? So it's been more than a month really since the last pay-per-view. And like I said, I'm fiending for it. I can't wait.
Yeah, Renier de Ridder, to be honest with you, I thought not someone that I considered all that much, but I did think about in a way. As a hot take kind of rookie of the year pick, for our end of the year picks. Even with just one fight and one win over Gerald Mushart. I don't think I ever saw that this fight was with Kevin Holland was booked just yet, so I didn't mention it. But I like where this is heading for him now, and because Kevin Holland, he's gonna bring it either way on the ground, on the feet, and
See, but on the ground though versus de Ridder,
yeah,
that's where it gets
what
dicey.
I mean.
For Holland.
It might not be the most polished, clean performance from Kevin Holland, but he's there to scrap, and so is Renier de Ridder. But Renier de Ridder, I think, is the more polished fighter. I think it's fair to say.
I mean, people forget how good that dude was when he was in like the midst of his prime at one championship. I think that this is a guy who really has some interesting potential at middleweight. I really do. And Kevin Holland that's such a good test for him because he's got to be on top of it on the feet. And if he can take Holland down and beat him up or submit him, that'd be really impressive. And to get a big win like that against a star in the UFC, that would definitely catapult him a lot further up the rankings. But,
yeah, so 2 title fights. I would say a title eliminator between Jamal Hill and Yuri Prochazka.
Probably more so for Hill than Yuri.
Yeah, definitely more for Hill. Which is crazy because this would be Yuri. If Yuri were to fight for the title again, this would be his, what, 3rd, 4th title fight?
Probably 4th.
4th.
Yeah, because he had the fight versus, it was Glover, right, that he beat for the title.
Yeah.
And then he had the injury, which is why Jamal got the title shot in the first place.
Yeah.
And then he had the 2 against Behead, right?
Yeah,
I don't think there were any other ones.
Yeah, that would be 4. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome, to be honest. I hope that could be fight of the night right there. So
yeah, that has a lot of potential. Although I will say this, stylistically, I think that people have so much hate for Jamal Hill that they're kind of discounting him, which they should not do, in my opinion, because I think that this fight on the feet at least kind of favors Jamal because he's a lot more of a polished striker, and Yuri has proven that he leaves his head open sometimes, and against a guy like Jamal Hill, you just can't do that. So I think that's going to be a really fun fight. And if it's not a really fun fight, I think it'll be a crazy finish, which, hey, who's complaining about either of those options, right? But this is gonna be a
I
really
think
fun
all
pay-per-view.
I honestly, yeah, I think I'll say I'll end it off with this. I think all these fights end in a finish.
Oh,
All
really?
5 fights end in a finish.
Okay.
That's my
I'll
bold hot
hold
take
you to
to
that.
start the year.
I'll hold you to that. Let's hope that happens. I think that'd be great for the fans. So hopefully that does happen, because then we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about next
Yeah.
week. But till then, we'll see y'all.
Feel just like a superstar. Doing all these drugs, I don't think I'm gonna see tomorrow. Living fast, brand new dash up in a foreign car. It's the type of shit that you be doing when you going hard.